Hello and welcome to the Unlocking Behaviour Change podcast, the show all about psychology and changing behaviour. My name is Jamie West. I'm a writer, performer and a musician, and I'm joined by Professor Emeritus Robert West. How are you today?
I'm good. Very, just had a lovely couple of days in Warwickshire in a lovely, a slightly weird hotel called Combe Abbey, which is a converted monastery, which is set up as a very, very Gothic ambience or ambience. They've really gone into sort of Gothic theme park mode.
Traitors. Yeah.
Very traitors-like, only probably, if anything, more so. Anyway, it's a lovely place to have a retreat, which was what we were having with my old team at UCL. Shout out to them if anyone's from there is listening.
Are they listening?
I don't know. Well, they're not listening at the moment. But
yes,
I believe
live.
that we have a few listeners from UCL.
Well, hello to all of our UCL listeners, because I studied there as well. So probably no one from the English department is listening to this. Although if you are, my goodness, hello. All right. So we have been talking about COM-B. And if you haven't listened to the episodes sort of introducing the COM-B model, you can go back and listen to those. But you can also pick up here. I am so wary of asking someone to switch off a current episode and do something else. You're like, no, just listen to me now. So today we discussed talking about COM-B 2.0.
Yes, COM-B 2.0.
And COM-B itself, you were saying, was developed around 2011-ish?
It was.
Like
the paper was published in 2011. I guess the model itself was developed over the preceding couple of years as we were writing the paper and getting the ideas together. And of course, it was part of the Behaviour Change Wheel, which is a framework for developing interventions. And it provided the sort of model of behavior that would inform your choice of strategy for changing behavior, so that you can decide for a particular behavior in a particular context in a particular population, to what extent you want to focus on improving someone's understanding or skills or abilities or whatever, their capability to do something, versus changing their environment in some way to facilitate it, or if it's a behavior you don't want, to block it, or whether you needed to do something about their motivation to do it. So essentially it provided the sort of theoretical foundation for a behavior change intervention strategy.
And we've sort of gone through all of that model. We've given an overview of it, at least. But now it seems you're ready to sort of do a beta test of COM-B 2.0. This is something that you're working on as we speak. This is cutting-edge COM-B technology.
It is cutting edge, as it were. And I put the cat among the pigeons a little bit towards the end of last year, because I was giving a talk to my very good friends and colleagues in the behavioural science unit in Public Health Wales, shout out to them, on...
So many shout-outs this episode. I don't think we've done a single shout-out the whole series.
The only two. And I was giving a sort of preview of some of the features, not all of them, but some of the features of the work that we've been doing over the last few years, using the user feedback and new developments in behavioural science and so on, to develop the COM-B model a bit further. And then I think it was a LinkedIn post or a tweet or something went out, COM-B 2.0, it's here. And it isn't here, it wasn't here. And so it caused a certain amount of consternation, because it wasn't, it was a bit premature. It's almost here. And for those people, I'm sure many of the listeners will be already familiar with COM-B and using it quite a bit. It's not like, we've gone back to the beginning and started again. It's very much building on what is already there. So it's very much backwardly compatible with COM-B. But what we've done is to formally elaborate the COM-B segments, as it were, into a more granular set of things, and I'll go into some of these, so that it's a bit clearer to someone where to focus their attention. Or when you say capability, for example, exactly what is it that you're wanting to target here. So we'll discuss that. In addition, it looks at a distinction, or formalizes a distinction that was somewhat implicit in the original COM-B model between individual human behavior at a particular moment, which is the sort of the atomic version, and population behavior over a period of time, which is the population version. So it brings out that distinction and the implications of whatever the level is that you're working at for how you do your COM-B behavioral diagnosis to target your intervention. Those are two of the things, and another thing that it looks at or develops is the linkage between the COM-B model, which is a specific model of behavior, and a whole other stream of work that Susan Mickey and I and colleagues at UCL and elsewhere have been doing on building ontologies to support behavioral science and its application, and aligning COM-B with this broader field of work of ontologies. For those listeners who are not familiar with the concept of ontologies, then there is a Substack article in the UBC series which introduces it.
And there is a podcast.
And there is even a podcast on it. Yes, of course there is. So anyway, it's an elaboration, a development, and a clarification based on user feedback and developments in behavioral science.
So it sounds like COM-B 2.0 is an expansion. It's not like it goes in and says, oh, actually, there were these loads of things in COM-B original. What would you call it? COM-B...
Classic.
COM-B classic that were wrong and now need lots of corrections. And oh my gosh, it's actually an expanded view. And when you spoke about using COM-B at a population level, I suppose when I was first introduced to COM-B and explaining it, so when you were explaining it to me, it was on an individual level. You're going, okay, if one person wants to, as we were saying in previous episodes, if one person wants to go to the gym, they've got to have the capability, the opportunity, and the motivation. And that was how it was sort of introduced. But this COM-B 2 now looks at population levels, which of course a lot of people are using COM-B, not just, they do use it for large groups. And I'm assuming that's why you felt the need to develop and expand it.
Yes. I mean, it was always intended that the model would apply at these different levels. But it wasn't made clear exactly what the linkage was between atomic COM-B and population COM-B. And so the way I think about it is that in the universe, in the world that we live in, the human behavior always exists, is always undertaken by people, individuals in the moment. And everything that we do when we aggregate it over, whether it's organizations or teams or cultures or populations or whatever, they're always aggregates of that. Now, there may be emergent characteristics, features, and so on that come out of the aggregation, but at the heart of it, we need to always remember that the moment is key in behavior, because behavior is so context sensitive. So, someone could be, to take a really sort of simple example, someone could be a supremely talented violinist. And so if you think at the sort of global level, their capability around playing the violin and even their motivation could be very strong, and they've got a beautiful instrument and everything set up for them to deliver a fantastic performance. But on the day of the performance, just before, they're due to go on, something happens, they're unwell, they've got a cold, they've got flu, whatever, that will change their capability, might even change their motivation at that moment. And if you don't offer the opportunity in your models of behavior to capture those momentary transitory factors, then even when you're dealing at a population level, that you will fail to predict behavior in the way that you need to. Another example is with traffic accidents. Traffic accidents are thankfully rare events at an individual level. At a population level, they're not rare at all. At a population level, they occur with a particular distribution, which happens, for those who are interested, to be a Poisson distribution, which is to say that most of the time there's
no... What does that mean, Poisson?
Poisson, as in fish.
Really?
Yeah. But it's not named after the fish. I think the guy... I'm guessing here because I haven't looked it up, but I think it was the mathematician who developed the
that was just that person's name.
Yeah. It wasn't that it looks like a fish. But basically, there's a high concentration around small numbers of accidents and then a long, long tail. So there will be some people who have, a lot of accidents, but there won't be many of them.
So it is, I've just looked it up, it is named after the French mathematician Simeon Denis Poisson, who himself was surely named after a fish somewhere back along the way.
Or looked like a fish in some way.
Somewhere, one of his ancestors. That sounds insulting. Some people think fish look beautiful though, so I think that covers our back on that.
Other fish look beautiful. They think we look horrible.
Yeah, I bet they do.
Yeah. So anyway, as that was an aside, but essentially at a population level, what I'm saying is that, if you take any one day or any 1 week in a country like the UK or the United States, there are accidents occurring over that day. But in order to understand the population level of accidents, you have to boil it down to what the contributory factors are on a moment-by-moment basis in the population that you're interested in. So even high-risk drivers are not always having accidents. What will happen is that in the moment, there will be a conflation of causal agents coming together that at that moment lead to them to drive in a particular way, to engage with other road users very often who are also driving in a particular way in road conditions, etc., etc., etc. So to understand the aggregate population level accident rate and to do something about it, it really pays to understand what the momentary influences on accidents are. So that's a bit of a digression, but it's just to say that with Combi 2.0, we're recognizing that behavior is always in the moment, and that it's individuals and individual aggregates, and that does lead to emergent properties when you're looking at cultures and groups and organizations, but never forget that. So in Combi 2.0, however, what we're doing is providing users with a way of understanding how that aggregation happens, so that the B in Combi, at the population level, we would now say more explicitly, this is the prevalence of a behavior. In other words, how many people in your population of interest are doing it, or the incidence of a behavior, which is not the same as prevalence, which is the number of times over a given period that the behavior happens. So prevalence and incidence is always a big one in epidemiology, the distinction between prevalence and incidence. But one is the number of individuals in the population who have this characteristic, and incidence is the rate at which this characteristic is found in the population. Anyway, prevalence, incidence. But in addition to that,
let me try and say that back, just because it's a little bit confusing, isn't it? So the way you're defining prevalence is as a characteristic of a person?
No, it'd be a characteristic of a population. So the prevalence of smoking in the UK right now is, let's say, 12%.
Yeah.
That's 12% of people. If we take a snapshot of the UK right now, 12% of people are smoking. The prevalence of, let's say, lung cancer in the population is, whatever it is, 0.3% or something. Now, incidence would be, if we take lung cancer, for example, would be the number of times in which there's a diagnosis of lung cancer. So it's an event which occurs, the diagnosis of lung cancer in a given year. So you might say that over in 2025, there were X number of cases of lung cancer diagnosed.
Right. Okay. So effectively, the prevalence would be how many people have lung cancer, and the incidence would be how many people were diagnosed with lung cancer over a given period.
Correct. Or how many diagnoses there were, because of course one person may be diagnosed twice. I mean, I'm not saying, wouldn't happen so much with lung cancer, but with accidents, for example, they might have more than one accident.
I've got you. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Continue.
Good. Right. And now we've done, so with that little lesson in epidemiology, which is actually really important, as it turns out, for behavior like it is for other things, then you've also got the rate or the average rate at which the behavior occurs in people. So, for example, the number of cigarettes smoked per day, something like that. And your behavioral target might be to reduce the number of cigarettes smoked per day. Or the amount of something that is done, like, for example, if you're how much alcohol is consumed. So once you get to the population level, these parameters become the ones you're focused on: prevalence, incidence, frequency, and amount. And we make that now much more explicit so that people, when they're using this, for example, to develop interventions, can be clear in their minds what it is they're targeting, because it makes a difference to what their intervention might be.
And that makes me think of one of the important key points that you always stress with COM-B is you'll say, okay, what behavior do you want to change? And then someone will reply, oh, I want people to think differently about about lung cancer, or just because we were talking about, I want people to think differently about smoking. And then you'll reply, actually, that's not a behavior. Yeah. So you are looking at behaviors. And what you've just said for COM-B point 2 is you are sort of putting a more granular level of exactly what the behavior is that you're trying to change, so you can target it more specifically and presumably measure your success more specifically as well.
That's right. It tells you not only how to, or gives you a guide, not only about what it is you're targeting, but as you've just brought in there, measuring. It gives you a guide as to what your evaluation should look like of your behavior change intervention. Am I looking at some kind of prevalence measure, an incidence measure, a frequency measure, an amount measure, for example? So, and that's just say on the behavior side. But if the same thing applies then at the population level with capability, opportunity, and motivation. So, for example, let's take motivation, which is obviously a potentially complex construct. In the atomic version of COM-B, motivation is a process. It's something that occurs over time, and is very much in the moment. I'm banged on about it endlessly in prime theory and so on, that you have to think of motivation as something that's very much embedded in the immediate moment that you exist. But when you're trying to change the behavior of population through motivation, very often you can't measure that process. You don't know what's going on at that time. All you can measure are what we call in ontology speak dispositions. So attitudes, tendencies to want things and like things and dislike things. What that means is that when you're using the population COM-B, the kind of variables that you're interested in will be more dispositional type measures that exist over a period of time, because over a period of time, in the moment, statistically, if you're higher on this, at some point that's going to interact with the environment in which you're in to cause the behavior. An example of that is obviously, and I keep using smoking as an example, but it's quite a good one, is that we can measure at this time by going to your door and asking you questions in a survey, how much you want to stop smoking. Now, we're not asking you how much, in a way, you're not interpreting that as right now, this minute, how much do I want to stop smoking, sort of like, in the next second. It's a more general dispositional measure. And then the presumption is that that's going to enable us to predict whether you're going to make a quit attempt sometime in the next 6 months or year. And it does, So that dispositional motivational measure aggregated over time and so on and over individuals is a good predictor of the rate of quit attempts over that period.
So when that person is being quizzed, when they're being questioned by someone on their doorstep who's saying, have you thought about, they often phrase the question actually differently. They might say, have you thought about quitting smoking in the last past week or month or something like that? They don't just say right now, do they? They ask the person to do a bit of introspection or a bit of analysis of their own behavior to give a dispositional reading rather than in this exact moment.
Yes. I mean, the questions vary, as you say, and the extent to which people provide a context to help the person to arrive at a dispositional interpretation of the question varies. In the study that we do, the Smoking Toolkit study, which we do every month for the population of England, Scotland, and Wales at UCL, I think the question is which of the following best applies to you, and it will be anything from I'm not interested in stopping smoking, or I don't want to stop smoking, through to I really want to stop smoking, and I hope to stop soon, sort of thing. So it actually combines in the disposition, the sort of dispositional desire, but also some sense of the intention with regard to the timing of it. And you put those together, and it actually produces a pretty good prediction of what's going to happen in the next 6 months. Now,
really,
that is a really classic example of population combi in action. And the same would apply then for things like opportunity and capability, where you might ask about or try and find out about someone's understanding, let's say awareness of the behavior. Now, I can be aware of the behavior in theory, somewhere in my brain, but I'm not always aware of it. I'm not always going around thinking about it. But to the extent that the behavior matters to me and is salient, I will do that more often over a period of time. So useful measures with regards to awareness are actually interesting. You should mention that in relation to stopping smoking, and have you thought about stopping smoking recently? That sort of gets to the salience issue. It's not just do you want to stop smoking, but is this something that you've even been thinking about? So with this population combi, your questions are going to be really more targeted at recognizing how the moment translates into the lots of moments and lots of people, so that you get these aggregate measures.
It's a bit like a sequel to a movie where the cast is now suddenly much bigger, and like in Expendables, where do you remember? Did you ever see that movie series with Stallone? And then they keep adding on extra sorts of action heroes and superheroes. Anyway, it's one of those where you kind of have expanded out, and now there's a CGI of now millions of people all combining at the same time.
It sounds like it. I think who knows what Combi 3.0 will be like. But so in just to sort of pull that together, population Combi and individual Combi separated out in Combi 2.0. Then it's not we're not saying anything different from what we've said before, but we're clarifying how you can use it. And how the population and the individual levels link up together.
Okay, well, it's exciting, and we're about time for this episode, but I think we'll be coming back to this in the next episode, because it feels like there's a lot more to say on Combi 2.0.
Yeah, there is, because that was just one of the things.
Yeah. So Well, this is brilliant because the more there is to learn, the more fun it is. So anyway, thank you, Robert.
My pleasure.
And thank you for listening wherever you are. Please do have a look at the books in the description and see if you might buy one of those books. They're awfully good.
You might have a disposition. We're trying to influence your disposition to buy them, which will be enacted in the moment.
In the moment. You could do it now. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much. And we look forward to joining you next time on the Unlocking Behavior Change podcast.